Hi, and welcome back to Let's Get Lit. In today's episode, we're going to be going over the Nun's Priest tale from the Canterbury Tales. Now, this is one of the most widely known stories from this collection of stories by Chaucer. This story includes chickens and boxes and epic love and romance. So, let's dive right in and let's see exactly what's in store in this tale, shall we? The story picks up with the knight telling the monk, for the love of God, please stop. They cannot handle any more tragedies. And that it's doing just the opposite for them and making everyone feel miserable about themselves. The knight says that he would rather hear a tale about someone starts off as poor and then becomes rich and keeps his prosperity. The landlord answers it and agrees and says, "Monk, can you please tell us another tale?" To which the monk says, "No," and that he's finished his tale. The landlord turns around and looks at the nun's priest and says, "Do you think you could give us a good escapade?" And the nun's priest agrees wholeheartedly, and soon begins his tale. We learn that his name is Sir John. The nun's priest begins the tale telling the group about an old woman who lived very meagerly. She had 2 daughters and herself to take care of. She had a small little plot of land that had a fence, and she had a few animals. The nun's priest goes on to describe all of the animals, including a sheep, some cows, and some chickens. Of these chickens, she had 7 hens and 1 rooster. The rooster was named Chauntecleer, and that he was the most beautiful and noble rooster that was ever seen. The nun's priest goes on to describe his physical features, how beautiful he was, and that he was the best at his job. He also tells of a hen who is equally as beautiful as Chauntecleer, and who Chauntecleer loved the most, and her name was Pertelote. The main story starts with Chauntecleer sleeping next to Pertelote. Pertelote can hear Chauntecleer struggling in his dreams, so she wakes him up. She asks him what the matter is and why he makes such strange noises. Chauntecleer responds that in his dreams he was out in the yard when he saw a creature that looked sort of like a dog, and that his color was between a retaining yellow, but that his tails and ears were dipped in black, and this creature wanted him dead. So this naturally frightened Chauntecleer, and those were the noises that she had heard. Pertelote responds to Chauntecleer and tells him that he really shouldn't take heed in anything that he dreams, and that it is unlike a strong and hardy man to be afraid of his dreams. She says that he needs to go on a diet and to purge himself, for maybe it is some sort of sickness. She tells him that for the next few days he should eat some worms, and that she'll mix a few herbs that are found in the backyard and, help him of his illness. Chauntecleer rebuttals Pertelote and gives her a prime example of how many stories in the past where people have had dreams, and actually those dreams being visions of what's to come in the future. He gives one example about 2 men who go into town but were unable to be room and board at the same place, so they had to be separated. One man was sent out to the ox's stall and another proper bedding place. During the night, the man who was in the proper bedding chambers had 3 dreams of his friend coming to him saying to help him because he was being murdered. The man who was properly sleeping did not take this warning and went back to sleep. In the next dream, he saw that his friend came to him and said that he had just been murdered, and the next day he would not find him at the ox's stall, but instead on a dung cart being carried out of the city. So the next morning, the man who was able to get good sleep arises and goes to the ox stalls to see if he can find his friend, but the landlord tells him that the man has already left. The man starts to search for his friend and decides to trust in his dreams, and he goes out to where the dung cart is and asks to see it, where he finds, as they dump it out onto the ground, his friend's body that had been murdered. Everyone in town comes to see what's going on, and the landlord and his accomplice are hung from trees and made examples from. Chauntecleer also gives another example of 2 men who are about to set sail out at sea to find faraway lands. The night before both men go to sleep preparing for the journey, one of them has a dream where a man comes to him and says that it is unsafe to travel the next morning, and that if they do, they are surely both to be drowned and the ship as well. So the man who has the dream tells his friend, but his friend says to put no stock in it, and the dreams are just folly. The man who has the dream decides not to go, but his friend sets sail, and a few days later he learns that his friend and the ship had both went down. He continues on a little spiel about various other instances, including one from the Bible where dreams are meant to be taken seriously, and that they're most oftentimes visions of things to come. He tells Pertelote that he will not do any type of laxatives because he doesn't like them. He goes on to tell his wife how much he loves her and how he is so grateful to have her by his side. He then flies down off the coop and finds a piece of corn on the ground. After this, all of his other wives run towards him, and then the nun's priest says that he is going to jump to something else, but we'll come back to Chauntecleer in just a few minutes. The nun's priest goes on to describe that it is now March and that everything is in full bloom and is beautiful. He also says that a black-marked fox, who was very wicked and very sly, had been lurking for 3 years in the woods nearby, waiting for just the right moment to strike at Chauntecleer. The narrator gets a little sidetracked and starts talking about other famous treasures and murders, etc., but goes back to Chauntecleer. He says that he took his wife's advice and did not think any more about the dream, so he goes out into the yard. While everyone is out in the yard, Chauntecleer sees the fox. Chauntecleer is very startled by what he sees, and before he can say anything, the fox comes out of hiding and begins to instantly start praising Chauntecleer for his singing and his ability to make sweet music. Chauntecleer is instantly charmed by all this flattery. The fox tricks Chauntecleer into singing for him, and when Chauntecleer agrees, he closes his eyes, stretches out his neck, and begins to sing. Upon this, the fox grabs him by the throat, slings him down, and then slings him onto his back and starts to run away with Chauntecleer. When the hens see this, they begin to cry out and begin to mourn for the death of Chauntecleer. Upon all the commotion, the older woman and the 2 daughters who lived in the house come running outside to see what's the matter. And they see that Chauntecleer is on the back of the fox, who's darting towards the woods. Both of them and everyone else begins to run out into the woods to try to find the flocks and get Chauntecleer back. While the fox is running, Chauntecleer actually gets enough strength to talk to the fox. The fox begins to slow down and talk back, and upon this, Chauntecleer is able to break free, and he flies up on a limb in a tree, and he's able to rest. While he's up on a limb, the fox tries to convince Chauntecleer to come back down, but to no avail. This is where the nun's priest tale ends. And the nun's priest basically recaps somewhat of a moral on how we shouldn't listen to flatterers, and to make sure we surround ourselves with good friends who listen to the warnings that God gives us. This is all for this tale. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, stay lit.